Hey guys, this is Sai from Proseek, and today we have another tier list video. Today we're doing Glute Day tier list with IFBB Pro Nicolette. So thank you for being here, Nicolette.
Yes, I'm very excited.
So before we get into the tier list, there's a couple of things that I want to outline as far as how we're judging these exercises. So first of all, we have the 4 tiers. So Glute Goddess being the top, as in these on almost every circumstance are going to be great exercises to have in your program. Then we have Certified Dumpy. So still very good exercises, but maybe there's some cases where you would choose one of these other ones instead of that one, or some cases where they're not the best or they have some limitation. Then we have Cheeked Up, which is, they're okay exercises, but probably one of these ones above them are better alternatives. And then we have Pancake Build, which is like, all these exercises are good, or like have their use cases and maybe there's specific use cases for it, but you would never choose one of these exercises over one of the ones above them. Um, so, and then when we talk about judging these, there's a couple different criteria we're talking about. So the first one's going to be the safety profile. So the risk, how risky is it? Is it easy to get injured on? So that's one thing we're going to consider. Another thing we're going to consider is the ease of execution. So how easy is it to master the execution of that exercise? Because if something's very easy and immediately can get good results, then that's a good thing. The overall ability to stimulate the muscles. So is it a good exercise to stimulate the glutes? And yeah, so those are the things we're going to consider. So ease of execution, safety profile, and effectiveness. So with that being said, we can go ahead and get started, and we will start here on the left side and just go across. So first up, we have the barbell hip thrust.
I love barbell hip thrust. That would be one of my absolute top must-do exercises. So the first one's definitely going in glute goddess category.
Okay, so if we break down the barbell hip thrust in those 3 different criteria, so like basically like safety profile, ease of execution,
Yeah.
and effectiveness, how would you kind of rank it among those?
Yeah, so execution-wise, I think this absolutely targets glute max, glute med to the most effectiveness. I've been doing hip thrust personally and programming for all my clients this movement. And setup wise, it can be tougher if your gym doesn't have access to, good bumper plates, a good bench height. So, and then safety form is always going to be number one, my top priority to protect the spine, lower back, and really target the muscles you're intending to. So, overall, it's a very safe movement if you perform the hinge really well, and execution can be really optimal in this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for that one. All right,
Yeah.
so next up we have the plate loaded hip thrust. So same exercise, but this one's going to be the machine where you're loading plates on the side rather than using a barbell.
Yeah, there's so many variations in hip thrust machines. So there's so many different brands that make a hip thrust machine, and I'm super particular with the actual machine and how effective it is for setup and execution, and how much does it assimilate a true barbell hip thrust. So based on just going a general looking across all plate loaded hip thrust machines, I'd put that one below the barbell hip thrust. There are some that I absolutely love and prefer those. And then there's some that I really wouldn't do just based on how the machine is set up, body positioning, and obviously person to person.
Okay, so you'd put it
Yeah.
in this category here?
Yeah. I would put it in that one.
Okay,
Hip thrust
so
is so good. I
mhm.
all my girls and myself have seen the most glute growth from it, and when I see men should be doing it too, okay? I'm talking about girls because I coach girls, but when I've seen a few male bodybuilders in my gym execute a hip thrust, and I'm, like, always cheering them on, so I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah, definitely a good staple to have. And I guess your main problem with the plate loaded or the limitation for that, for why it's here instead of here, would be because the machines aren't consistent, and there are certain
Yes.
machines that may be less effective than others. Whereas with the
Yes.
barbell, every gym has it. You can always set it up. So that's the main difference between those two.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So then next up, we have the reverse hack squat.
I love a reverse hack squat. I love variations of a squat being more glute biased. So I would put that one in the very top as well. Glute goddess.
Okay, then how would you break this one down in terms of
So
ease of
yeah,
use?
for
Yeah.
for a squat pattern, and we're talking about being fully glute biased, a reverse hack squat is going to be more effective in getting the glutes targeted, isolated, and more of a hinge pattern. And then obviously the safety with that, it's really well executed with the machine. And yeah, I definitely prefer the hack squat or a, another glute focused squat that I program.
Okay, then I guess for the next one, I'm just gonna skip forward to the barbell squat so we can kind of see how
Yeah,
that
we can do that
compares.
one. It matches, yeah. I would put that one at the bottom.
Ooh, okay.
Pancake, I know. But for this one, again, we're talking about really targeting and isolating the glutes. So this compound movement, you're gonna have more risk of injury, more risk of every other muscle picking up. So you're going to get a bit more quad activation, erectors, and things like that. So I definitely, in the squat pattern for glutes, program, something like a reverse hack or another squat pattern that's going to be a bit more effective.
That makes sense. So main difference here would be that the safety profile is a little bit worse, easier to get injured here versus that reverse hack. And the reverse hack does a better job of isolating the glute, whereas the
Yeah,
squat is more of a compound lift that hits glutes, quads, erectors, and everything. Yeah.
everything. Yes.
Um, okay. So then we will go to the leg press.
So leg press, I would put in the cheeked up category. I really like a well executed leg press, really safe movement, able to lock into the machine, keeping your joints really well protected and aligned. But with this high degree of like knee flexion, we're talking about just the glutes being involved. They are going to target a bit of glute max, but you're going to get more quad, hamstring dominant on this one.
Is there a way to position yourself to make it more glute dominant?
So, positioning, yeah, it depends on the actual leg press and how much hip extension you can get on a leg press. There is a machine that is a bit higher up, the plate is higher up rather than a true 45-degree. So, that one, you can get a bit more hip extension. So, you're going to target definitely more glutes in this. Um, yeah, so that one I would say is more effective than like a 45-degree
Hmm.
leg press, but it really comes down to form, like intention with how you're pressing, what you're engaging and targeting. So that makes a big difference too. In coaching, I like give cues on like where to press through the feet, how to
Hmm.
engage the muscle and that mind muscle connection in it. So it's definitely effective, but it's the other ones top it for like really targeting just glutes.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. And as far as the leg press angle, if you're looking for one with a higher angle, and then if you don't have that, like you have a traditional 45-degree angle, I guess if you put your feet higher up on the platform and like push through your heels more, would you target the glutes more than um, otherwise? Or how would you adapt on a normal 45-degree angle one?
Yeah, I still like the setup to be at, a 90-degree angle, keeping your joints aligned. So
Hmm.
you still will get some hip extension there. And it's not bad to work the quads and hamstrings in synergy with the glutes. Obviously, these compound movements are going to be effective for putting on density and shape everywhere. But again, if someone's like really specific on just needing glute growth, I would just choose another movement to program and allocate volume accordingly across the week. So,
Yeah, that makes
yeah.
sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So next up, we have the RDL. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. So we can kind of
Uh-huh.
talk about what your favorite versions of this and which ones will be the most effective versus least effective.
Yeah. RDL, that's definitely at the very, very top. My favorite, like hinge pattern, absolutely.
Hmm.
So I personally do and program so many different variations of this. Dumbbell are very effective, barbell, um, something like a B stance RDL is really awesome for biasing more unilateral, and then a true unilateral RDL is really great too.
Can you explain the B stance one?
Yeah, so the B stance, you are going to be positioning your body. I always set up in a true RDL foot stance first because you want to
Hmm.
get the form, you want to get your hips in the proper positioning because we're still executing that same hinge. We're just going to say if we're working the right leg, we're going to step that back leg back about to the heel, and we're not placing that foot flat on the ground. We're up. So there's not really any weight on that back leg. It's about 70% to 80% on that front leg. So you'd execute the hinge the exact same way, but
Okay.
you're going to bias that front working leg to make it more of that unilateral. And with the B stance, you get a bit more stability because that back leg is still positioned on the ground, giving you
Hmm.
stability versus some people I see execute a true single leg RDL, and you have to kick that back leg up in the air, which
Hmm.
provides less stability, ability less to load and progress it.
Okay. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's a great in between. I actually haven't seen that much. So if you were to talk about the different modalities, so like using a barbell versus a dumbbell versus a Smith machine, which ones are your favorite, and which one do you think is the best for people to use?
Yeah. I prefer dumbbell RDL. That's my go to. That's my favorite. All are super effective, but dumbbell, I like having both the weights being separate so you aren't in a fixed position. You can move in your hinge and with your joints properly rather than being fixed.
Hmm.
Um, and then, same thing for the B stance. I do love loading that with two dumbbells. You can do it contralaterally, which just means the opposing hand. So they're really, really great. And then the barbell and Smith machine are still very, very effective. They're just going to have that fixed position movement where you can position the dumbbells in front of your body, a little bit to the side.
Hmm.
You have that flexibility within that movement.
Okay. If you were to, so if this was a barbell only, would you change your position? Or would you still have it at the top?
No, I would have it at the top. Yeah.
So you got to do
Always,
these regardless.
always needing RDLs. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Um, all right. So next up, we have the glute kickback. So that can be either like machine or cable. You can kind of explain the difference between the two if you have a preference. And
Yeah, I would put that one at the very top as well for Glute Goddess. With the training glutes, you need those different movement patterns to get the full development of your glutes to get rounded, shaped, fully proportionate glutes. So, targeting a bit more upper glute, like the glute medius and upper glute max fibers, we need some variation of kickback, which is going to target that, abduction, which you can do in a kickback form. So, I absolutely love a kickback variation, and many of them, of course.
which one's
Yeah.
your favorite? So which modality is your favorite and what
Okay,
variations?
so most my favorite, I this is hard because I love so many. These are all hard because I love all these movements
Hmm.
and program them all. They all have their place, but I have been really favoring a crossover cable glute kickback. So I've been doing that personally and then programming that for my women competitors. And it's been really effective in targeting the upper glute because you have that crossover in that non working leg. And then the
Hmm.
kickback angle is slightly out to get those fibers that come across the upper glute med. Yeah. So I love that
Okay.
one. Yeah. Yeah.
And using a cable versus like a machine, like a pin loaded machine,
Mhm.
kickback,
Yeah.
which one do you think is better? And why?
Oh, it's
If you had
really
to pick one.
tough. It depends on the machine. I also have in my program, I consistently use this plate loaded kickback machine that's
Hmm.
almost more of like a pendulum. and it's killer. I love that one, and I can load it a lot more than I can load a cable.
Hmm.
Okay, because of the stability being locked into the machine and being able to load my glute more unilaterally. Whereas the cable, you're stabilizing yourself on that fixed bar. So I do love both. It's really hard to choose, but I do think there are more non great machines for isolating. Like they're great isolating, but it depends on the machine and how it's made. And then
Hmm.
cable, you can work within your body, your limb length, the setup, and there's so many variations with cable. Straight leg kickback, crossover, cable, abduction, full abductions, a half kneeling that I've done. So lots of different variations. So I would say for most people going into the gym, I would choose a cable kickback because they'll have access to that more so than a machine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But would you say a great machine is better than cable, but in on average, you would still choose cable because it's more accessible, or do you think that the cable is still better, even than the best machine?
Oh my gosh. You ask the hardest questions because it depends on the overall programming, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're doing the cable kickback and getting that isolation factor and then having that's our like abduction work for the week, like the volume is allocated
Hmm.
across the week, and more times than not I'm training glutes, and my ladies that are trying to build and shape their glutes are training them more than once a week. So there's room for both variations. And then you get both modalities of being able to load and progress with the stability of a plate loaded
Hmm.
or machine. And then you get that isolation factor from that cable and that different modality that can really help to progress.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I know I'm not answering directly, but
Mhm.
both and both are so effective, and what you guys going into the gym have access to would absolutely work.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it depends on your use case and what you have
Yes.
access to.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'm gonna say we're gonna have to cap off all the spots in
What?
the Glue Goddess now. So you have to start choosing.
Okay,
um,
well, hip abductor goes, like, also at that top because we need an
mhm.
abduction variation, but it can be, you know, glute kickback, hip abduction. I would still put that at the top to target glute med.
Would you put glute kickback over hip abduction or hip abduction over glute kickback?
Mm, I need both.
All right, we'll rank these after.
Okay,
So
okay,
so
I
right now
need
we'll put them just in the category. Um, so yeah, so hip abduction. What's the best modality? Just typically the machine one, right? And then is there
yes.
any other way you do it?
Love the machine one. There's many different machines of this. The Gluteator, I'm love. Not many gyms have it, and I scour for it because that one's amazing. I don't know. Have you used the Gluteator and seen that one before?
No, I haven't. Is it still like the same sitting abduction or
It's seated, but you're higher up, and the plates are loaded on the outside, and you almost
okay?
open up and down with the legs. So you open like this. We can put a video of it, but it's
Yeah.
really awesome. Like, I love that one because it takes some of the pressure off, like, my hip joint, and
Mhm.
that's something I find that gives me a bit of issues with training glutes this much and abducting and hinging, so,
Mhm.
I love that one when I have access to use it. But the true hip abduction machine is also very great variation-wise. I love, like, a leaned forward variation.
Mhm.
I do a banded variation that I really love to create a bit more tension and put it really in that upper glute.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes. Um. All right. So next, yeah, I think that one's a very safe exercise too. Very easy
very
to
safe.
do.
Mhm,
First day in the gym, you can probably go there and do that pretty well. Um.
absolutely. But you gotta make sure you're doing the compounds, like, those are what really puts the density on, and
Mhm.
for that glute med is a lot smaller muscle than the glute max, so you really need to do those compounds, and this is programmed in, and volume across the week is, in there, but not as heavily biased as what's gonna build that density, build
Mhm.
that shape as the compound movements would.
Right. Um, okay, so next up we have reverse lunges.
Mhm. Reverse lunges. So I will put them one under glute goddess. For I love a reverse lunge. I love a true reverse lunge.
Mhm.
My favorite is a glute. I call it a glute focused lunge. So I do it a little bit different than a true reverse lunge to target glute a bit more, and I stabilize on it instead of completely doing reverse where I would step back and up
Mhm.
and back and up. I'm stabilized, stationary, and really targeting the lower glute max. So my glute focus lunge would be definitely in that category.
So
Reverse
can you
lunge, yeah.
so can you describe okay, so when you say you do it differently, so you keep your leg back like a reverse lunge, but you don't bring it forward, is that what you're saying? And you
Right.
just stay in
Yeah.
that position and go. Okay,
Stationary, and then I'm stabilizing on I'm holding a dumbbell and on the opposing hand, and I'm stabilizing
gotcha.
on a bench so that I can really get good isolation and load the glute. I find when you're doing a true reverse lunge, majority of people utilize that back leg. So
Mhm.
momentum, push off, and that drive, and that's the body's natural response. We want to push off and help to just get up. So
Yeah.
this way we can really target and isolate the glute and what we're trying to load here.
So you're putting that back foot up on a bench. So right?
Mm-mm, it's on the
No?
ground. We're
So what do
just
you mean by
stabilized.
stabilizing with the
I'm
bench?
holding like with this arm instead of being like just holding two dumbbells or
Uh-huh.
like on a barbell. I'm actually holding the bench
Okay. Holding a
and
bench on
then,
one side and then the dumbbell at the other side and the
yep,
back leg back. Okay, gotcha.
yep.
So that version of the reverse lunge you would put here, if we were talking about the traditional reverse lunge, would you still keep it there?
I would, mm, depends how it's executed. So I still think they're important to do a unilateral and a big stretch position for the glute max. So I would
Mhm.
keep it there. Just got to pay attention to that back leg and like not really pushing off and really utilizing that front working glute.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mhm.
So next up we have weighted step ups. So any
I
sort of
would
motion like that, I guess. Like also the like pushing down. I've seen people use
mm,
like the assisted pull up machine for that.
I've
And
seen that. Yes. I would put those in cheeked up actually.
okay. And why is that?
Y- I prefer what I was just explaining, the
Mhm.
glute focus lunge or a reverse lunge over the step up. They're still amazing, of course. And some
Mhm.
people really can get good connection and they love them. So this is obviously always going to depend on the person, but I do find the stability with the reverse lunge and the execution and setup of that being my preference.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, and weighted step ups also it's like a little bit I would say because you're not as stabilized, like if you're holding dumbbells and stepping up on like a box or something, there is a slightly higher risk of like, falling or losing your
Yeah,
balance or something.
for
So,
sure.
see, I think that's a little bit of a knock against it too. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, next we have the Bulgarian split squat.
I love these as well. I would put them with, I mean, certified dumpy would be my place in that. And I know we're gonna rank them in
Mhm.
those categories. So I do love a Bulgarian split squat as a unilateral. That's really great movement. Yeah.
Okay, and then how do you execute them? What modality and do you find like the most effective or that you find you program the most?
So typically I would do a dumbbell with a bit of stability. So, like, holding the opposing side onto a bench like a machine. So,
Mhm.
I do love, like, the added stability aspect. Performing just a true Bulgarian split squat is also great, and then a Smith machine, you're gonna get that stability as well because it's fixed.
Okay, so
Um,
all.
Yeah, you have to do these like like glute focused. So
Hmm.
you're hinging a bit more. If you have more knee flexion, you're gonna definitely bias the quad, and you will bias it regardless. That's why I was like taking my time with deciding this one because it depends on the athlete I have. Um,
Hmm.
if they need quads, and hamstrings a bit more and we're okay with putting more volume to those other muscles, we'll program this in. If someone we want to back off on that volume associated to their quad and put real glute density, I'll probably like preference something else other
Gotcha.
than these because you're absolutely gonna get quad with the knee flexion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So that's why it's in this category instead of this one because maybe you're taking a little bit of volume away from the glutes, and one of these, if you want to exclusively um, train the glutes, one of these might be better.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so finally we have the reverse hyperextension.
So the true reverse hyperextension machine,
Mhm.
I would put that at the very bottom. And in substitute of this one, I would do my favorite machine, which is the glute builder kneeling glute isolator. So
Mhm.
not many people have that machine, but it's my favorite. That one goes at the top. But and then a 45-degree hip extension would be better than loading in the machine true reverse hyper.
Okay, so if we're
Mhm.
talking about the 45-degree hyper, what would
Yeah.
that go into?
The 45-degree hip extension, that one's done on the like back,
Yeah,
true
the
like
lower back
back
extension.
hyperextension. And the way you're going to execute that one is not for your back or flexing from the spine at all. You're going to execute it as a true hinge. So you're thinking about hinging the hips and coming up with that hinge and contraction your glutes versus like lifting the chest and like curving that back. That's going to
Mhm.
get too much lower back. We want this to be I like to think about an RDL on the way down. So you're hinging the hips, pushing back, and then a hip thrust coming up where you're hinging those hips and fully contracting your glutes to 100%. And this one's, you can load it in the front of you, holding a plate. You can do a banded load. It's a really great hinge movement in a different position and setup than a RDL or hip thrust.
So when you're setting up for this exercise, at
Mhm.
what point, like where is the machine relative to your body? Is it right on your hip?
You would want it just slightly below your hips because you want to be able to move through your hips and hinge them. You don't want it to be fixed on the hip joint. So I put
Mhm.
it slightly below my hips at the top of my quad.
Okay.
Hmm.
And then where would you rank that variation?
That variation, I would say it would go in certified dumpy. Yeah.
Okay.
Right below. Yeah, that one. That one. And then, like I said, the other machine I do a lot is at the top. We
Blue
can put a
Goddess. Okay.
video and show that
We
that
will.
machine. And because it's similar where you're executing that hinge and
Mhm.
having that load and you're executing just from the hips and then contracting up from hinging and pulling from the glutes.
Okay. Um, all
Yeah.
right. So now what we're gonna do is rank these. I'm gonna say you have to try and knock one of these out of the top and put them in another spot. So that way we can. And when we think about that, what I want you to think about when you consider this is if we were to only choose this exercise for glutes, so we have to walk into the gym and only do one exercise for glutes, and that's how we build our glutes.
Ah,
Um, that's going to be how we rank kind of the effectiveness of these.
uh-huh.
So in this glute goddess, we have the barbell hip thrust, the reverse hack squat, the RDL, um, glute kickback, and hip abductor. So which of these by itself would you not be able to use to grow your glutes or grow your glutes the least effectively?
Yeah. So my top, ranking the top first.
Yeah, ranking the top.
Okay. This is going to be really hard. So, because they're all necessary to grow your glutes because of the different patterns, like I explained, but
Hmm.
we'll we'll go for it. But barbell hip thrust is a number one for sure. I do
Okay.
really see the best results from that. Really love the barbell hip thrust for like full glute development.
And then second,
RDL,
and
reverse
then
hack would be next,
mhm.
and glute kickback. Yeah. I don't know. Those two are really hard to decide between glute kickback and abductor because I like both, but
Okay.
I like the glute kickback.
So this will be the order up here, and then
Yeah.
you think this is going to be a clear step up from these.
Yeah. We're keeping the top like that.
Okay. So now we'll go
Yeah.
to the certified dumpy categories. So how do we order these?
Plate loaded hip thrust. That would be yes.
Hmm.
Reverse lunge, glute focus lunge, and then Bulgarian split squat. So that's actually in its order.
And then cheeked up, we have the leg press and weighted step ups.
Hmm. Weighted step up over leg press if we're talking just obviously glute.
Glute. Hmm.
Yeah, biased. Yeah.
Okay, and then finally we have the barbell squat and the reverse hyperextension machine.
This is tough because barbell squat will absolutely grow your glutes, right? If you
Hmm.
need mass everywhere and like that's something you're just getting into the sport and you really need to put on lean muscle everywhere, a barbell squat is an amazing compound movement. And then your reverse hyper is going to be more of that isolation exercise. So they're
Hmm.
two completely different movements and both will be effective in growing just different people. It's so individualized.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I don't do a barbell squat, but again, I have the muscle I need. So it's, if I had a newer athlete.
Right.
So, yeah, they're tied. I can't do a tie. What would you say?
I think I would say a barbell squat just because it
Yes.
is like if I were to have someone try and grow their glutes with one exercise, walk in and do 15 sets of one of these, I would choose the barbell squat instead of reverse hyperextension.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Um, okay, cool. So now I just want you to give a quick 2-minute summary of this so we can have a quick idea of why you put each of these, like these five at the top. What separates this category from these and these? Like what were you taking into consideration?
Yeah. So when I program for like glute development, shape, and just overall density to build the glutes, we're looking at the patterns of movement. So we want to have a hinge pattern. The barbell hip thrust is going to be a hinge pattern and it's most dominant in the shortened position, meaning your glutes are under the most amount of tension at the top where you're contracted, right? So that is a modality of a hinge that's going to be a shortened position movement. Then when we go into an RDL, it's a lengthened position movement. So it's a hinge pattern. But when your glutes are under the most amount of tension is when you're in the stretch. So when your hips are pushed back. So at the bottom of the rep. So both are super effective in training your glutes in different movements, different patterns, and different ranges
Hmm.
of tension is really important. So that's, you want to absolutely do both. um, Reverse hack and doing a squat pattern gives that added knee flexion, whereas the other two don't. The other two, you're keeping the knee joint fixed, and then that squat pattern, you're going to have that knee flexion and hip extension, but more of that knee flexion. So it's going to be, again, a different pattern to target those glutes, the glute max. And then you absolutely, for glute med and creating that upper glute and roundness, you absolutely need an abduction and isolated movement to target the glute med fibers a bit better. So that would be the kickback and hip abduction. So that's pretty much the top of the top. And
Yeah.
if you take those four movement patterns and you program your workouts throughout the week doing a bit of different variations with just those four, you will transform your glutes. Absolutely. But
Okay.
always form is number 1. Like, I'm a stickler on form, and I coach, myself, watching my videos of how I'm executing, and then all of my athletes, making sure they're hinging properly, not getting lower back. We don't wanna have lower back pain or, the erectors involving too much, developing them.
Hmm.
So, and then intentionality with each rep. Like, where are we pushing through the connection and force in the feet, the contraction? So, all those factors really go into play with every single movement in your training.
Yeah, no, that was a really good description of all of those and what makes them unique and effective. So, if we go to this next category, the certified dumpy tier,
Mhm.
what is holding back? So, all these exercises are also great, but what is specifically holding it back from being in that top?
Yes. Um, I love a plate loaded hip thrust. Like I said, it's really just some machines I just wouldn't go on just because of the mechanics of that machine and the position it puts your body in. So some, will not allow the hinge to be as effective, or some might, get a little bit lower back involved where you can't brace and engage your core as much. Um, some of the platforms are completely different. Like, one is super high and angled. So
Hmm.
it's all very, there is one or two plate loaded machines that I absolutely love, though. Like, they are so effective. So that's why that one is a bit
Yeah,
below the barbell hip thrust.
just inconsistency.
hmm And then I love these two movements because of the need of and utilization of a single leg. So, correcting any imbalances, right? Not everybody is perfectly symmetrical and
Hmm.
strong on both sides. So, doing something that's single leg where we can correct imbalances and catch things that maybe you don't in a bilateral movement where one side is picking up a bit more or things like that. So, doing a unilateral should absolutely be in your glute program too, for sure.
But if we talk about those by itself, like in a vacuum of growing your glutes, you would still prefer these,
hmm
right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, you can do the RDL unilateral with like a B
Hmm.
stance. Kickback is unilateral, so those are why I put them in the one below category, but still awesome movements that I program a lot.
Yeah, and these
Yeah.
cheeked up. What are the major limitations of these ones?
Yeah, I would say weighted step ups, the setup and the
Hmm.
consistency of that. So, how high are we setting up the box? How much degree of stretch should we get? How can you execute that being more glute biased? Are we getting more quad and knee flexion? How stabilized are we in this movement? I do love a step up, and they are targeted, but I would just prefer a reverse lunge or split squat to them.
And the
And then
leg
leg
press?
press, like I said, super effective and great. It's a great compound movement, but with being, you know, I prefer like the compound movement being the barbell hip thrust or RDL because we're going to get some good quad involvement in that one.
Okay, then finally these two. Um, so yeah, obviously the barbell squat's a super popular exercise. So what's keeping it at the bottom?
The barbell squat, again, it's more of that. I prefer a machine modality. So there's so many machines you can do a squat on. We talked about the reverse hack. There's
Hmm.
also other ones. You can utilize a Smith machine. You can utilize an other plate loaded squat machine that they have. There's a pit shark, meaning like a belt squat, right? So you
Hmm.
can use a belt squat or you can use that a handle or attachment to hold in between to have that belt squat. So where it's loaded, that's going to make a difference. That weight being loaded versus putting that weight on your back
Yep.
and your
Hmm.
spine with that risk of injury, and muscle group involvement when we're talking about just growing the glutes.
Yeah, and then the reverse hyperextensions.
Yeah, though that machine is not my particular favorite for isolating the glutes. You're completely parallel. So unless you can literally go super light and only contract your glutes, you are going to get spinal flexion and
Mhm.
involvement in the back. Absolutely. Because the whole upper body, you're fixed from here to your hips, right?
Yeah.
So you're also laying prone. So it's very hard to execute it just in the glutes without any back. So that's why I really prefer the kneeling glute isolator machine and a 45-degree hip extension to that one. Because you're going to get that hinge and that glute contraction and not risk, getting that back involved as much.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. All right. I think that's a great summary of the list. So before we go, I just want to say that you can find Nicolette on Proseek. And I just want to talk about what services you have on there. I believe you do virtual and in-person posing and online coaching. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah, I do posing. I coach competitors, so my team of athletes, and I coach lifestyle clients as well. And then I do in person training and in person assessments for my athletes or anyone who needs to check on form or really optimize their training program to be targeting the proper muscles. In the sport of bodybuilding, and I coach, primarily fit model bikini wellness. It's a sculpted look. So when you go into the gym, it's specific, having a specific program and specific form associated with that. You don't want to just go in and move weight from point A to B. It's almost like, think of like a sculpture and like using an like a little carving thing is how we really shape the body versus just going in and moving weight and not having the detail and specificity to the programming and the form.
Yeah. And you're in the South Jersey area.
Yep.
Is that
Yep.
correct?
South
Yeah.
Jersey. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in the South Jersey area and you want to meet Nicolette in person, you can find her on Proseek, as well as if you're not in South Jersey, you can still find her on Proseek and do virtual posing
Yeah.
uh,
And
and
we
have
do.
online consultations too.
Absolutely. I do. If anyone, since we talked so much about training too, if anyone needs help, just a set, I do, some of my clients just submits form videos, right? So I have all my clients do that automatically because I check their form. But
Hmm.
anyone who, already has a coach and just needs a little bit more tailored look at their form, we can hop on a video call. I can watch some of your movement
Yeah.
live that I've done before, or a submission of training videos that I can give you, that I can talk through, show you on the screen, and give you some corrections that I really think would help optimize, mitigate, pain you're experiencing, or just if you're stuck, like not having that glute growth you want to see, like what's going to take it to the next level is some of those details that you may not catch yourself.
Yeah. And you can find that on her page. If you click Ask
Yeah.
Nicolette, you can submit a video and Nicolette can go through and break it down and send back a response. And same thing for any other questions you might have, because I think you have a couple of topics that you can send videos for. Um, Also, there's a public Q&A on Proseek where you can ask questions to pros and have all pros like Nicolette and every other IFBB pro on the platform answer for $5 a month. And you can get a 10% discount if you use Nicolette's code, which is Nicolette, right?
Yes, it is Nicolette.
Box will put all the links to her profile, the Q&A, her code, and please comment, like, and subscribe any other topics, or if you agree, disagree with anything that we discussed here. So thank you, Nicolette, for coming on. And we'll come on again soon, and we'll have some other topics to talk about.
Yeah, it was so fun. Thank you for having me. Thank you guys for watching. And yeah, if you have any suggestions on what to do next, and check out me on Proseek. And just Proseek's platform has so many amazing features and offers. So you can find a lot on there until our next one where we dive into more and describe more stuff. It's fun.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.